That would be great. Good evening and welcome to a special edition of my rhubarb. I'm going to say rhubarb sports show, but today as you can see, we are chatting very specifically about London 9s, and I have a fabulous guest here, Graham, with me, and he's like the epic legend behind this, and we're going to find out a little bit more about how he got to where he is, and how have you been doing in lockdown? First and foremost, how are you doing?
Hungry for getting out there and throwing a ball around, really. As you know, obviously this weekend coming up would have been our third annual 9-a-side, and yeah, kind of stir crazy at the moment, really, especially given the weather's so nice as well. It's pretty tough, isn't it?
You must live in a better part of the country than me, because it's pretty rubbish here.
I'm in the southwest of London at the moment, so yeah, I think we've been pretty lucky.
It's almost tropical compared to West Yorkshire, believe me.
Hey, look, this skin was formed in West Cumbria, so 23 miles from the border with Scotland. So I know exactly what it's like to have a nice bit of northwest summer.
If your skin was formed in Cumbria, could you tell us, some people who don't know who you are, could you tell us a little bit about, your background, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. Let me think. So I originally grew up in big amateur rugby league country on the West Cumbrian coast, in between Workington, Whitehaven, Aspatia, Maryport, up and down that area. Jam eater country, as they call it, which is probably a story for another time. Played a bit of union and league when I was younger, and played a reasonable level schoolboy union, and then actually started playing league when I was at university and really got into it then. And it was when I came down to London for work after university in 95-6, I think it was. The London Scholars was just starting up then, way back when. A young man called Mr. Hector McNeil. I'm not sure if he's grown very much since 1996.
What, you mean in height?
He's grown immensely in stature, of course, but yes, a similar height to myself. I started growing sideways rather than vertically. But yeah, so that was kind of I kind of got involved with the Scholars back in their first season, and we really got stuck in. I remember that was back when we were playing summer. Sorry, we were playing winter. But we played in a summer conference in London, if I remember rightly. And for about 2 or 3 years, I'm pretty sure we played both. We played winter and summer back in the late 90s. But yeah, back then, I think it was in the early 2000s, we actually set up the Middlesex 9s, realising that to encourage folks in a non-traditional area, we had to think a little bit outside the box, and we got quite a few forces sides involved, a few rugby union sides, and it was actually a really great event. And I think around about that time, the York 9s was going on as well, if I remember rightly.
Can I ask you a quick question then? I mean, universities playing rugby league, was that something that you specifically chose your university because of, or was it just a complete accident?
Yeah, pretty much by default, actually. If I'm being honest, I was intending to play rugby union, and I didn't really fit the mould for the league that was playing rugby union, should we say. And a lot of my mates in college were playing league, so I ended up playing over and enjoyed it far more, because you could, and finding similar things, which we'll probably mention later about in the US, people relatively new to the sport, you get a lot more freedom to express yourself in a game of rugby league than you do in a more positional game like rugby union. And yeah, it was just good fun, and I could see that it was a much better proposition to get more people into the sport as well. There wasn't any elitism or and you see this reflected, I think, in the families and the crowds that support games as well. It's much more universal across age groups and everything as well. So, and the whole 9-a-side format was something I jumped on later on to take it to a more sort of festival style.
Yeah. I mean, 9-a-side, people are probably quite familiar with sevens in rugby union. Well, I'm making an assumption there that make it, that they're as familiar with that. But 9s in rugby league doesn't quite yet have that same recognition. Is that something that, obviously you thought, I love 9s, this is fantastic, I want to get it to that same point?
I think if I had a few £1 million, I probably would. On paper, of course, if it fits perfectly, it makes sense, doesn't it? And I think you're even perhaps seeing that with rugby union start to adopt 10-a-side a little bit more, because they realise 7 is such a vastly different game and set of skill base to 15-a-side that you can't really transition athletes from one to the other. Whereas I think 9s is close enough to 13-a-side that you can transition players across. But also, I think it serves a purpose for a lot of developing nations who, let's face it, struggle to get 13-a-side games on, but they can play on a 9-a-side format and get game time, play teams they wouldn't ordinarily get to play. And at the end of the day, we're trying to create a spectacle and create a pathway into building the game internationally and creating interest. So I think on two main levels, you've got real potential with it. One, it encourages the bottom funnel, a nice wide funnel to bring more people into playing and enjoying the sport. And secondly, I think as a product in its own right, it's a fantastic, compelling proposition for a broadcaster. And, something like streaming now, people love the engagement and the attention span, of course. I struggle myself now to watch 80 minutes of rugby if it's not a great game. And I remember going to, I think it was Wembley a few years ago, to watch a double header. And it's actually quite tough to watch 2 full games of rugby league.
Definitely. Have you? I found that with Magic Weekend, So we went to do comms for one game, but we had a ticket, so we went to watch them all. And actually, it's quite a tiring element to the concentration if you're just kind of watching it in the background. But certainly, if you're trying to commentate or look at the technical back to back, it is far more tiring than you think. But like you said, the format for the 9s means that actually, I mean, last year, if we just touch on that, other than it being very very nice weather, unlike it is in West Yorkshire today, it was.
Irvine has still got sunburn, I think, from 12 months ago.
I don't think he was the only one, actually. But it was beautiful weather, and you could almost dip in and out as a spectator, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, well, I think that's it. I mean, it's a long day, especially if you like yourself commentating and the guys in the sun and stuff, and the players. It was a long 7 hours plus day in the scorching heat. But if you say for instance, we mentioned the Magic Weekend there. Say you imagine that as a 9s format. I think at the very basic, you're getting more fans interacting, because by the nature of the game, fans who are supporting a team that are playing in one of those 3 games in a day will realistically only come and watch their team play and then leave. If you've got a plethora of teams playing, you've got fans all over the stadium, all mixed up, dipping in and out throughout the day. Most of the fans will stay in that stadium, have a few drinks, enjoy it, and watch and interact with other fans and watch other teams, just because of the love of seeing the rapidity of the sport and the amazing tries that are being scored at pace, because it's promoting running rugby with a little bit more freedom. And I think you can achieve that at an amateur level, as we discovered last year in the London9s, seeing some teams who were coming from countries we wouldn't normally associate with rugby league, like the USA, and just blowing teams away with some phenomenal athleticism, weren't they?
They were genuinely, though. I mean, they're just athletes. They were powerful. They were fast, and they picked up the game so quickly. They were learning as they played. You could literally see them gelling and utilizing little techniques that they were watching other teams use, and it was beautiful to watch that growth as well. And I mean, the ladies their team was incredibly quick, but they were physically so strong. It was it was a beautiful thing to watch, and I think that was the attraction as well. You know, it was almost like I was willing them to get to the final to see what they could do by the end of the tournament. Do you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like if they'd have got knocked out a bit earlier.
Yeah, it would have been a travesty in a way, I think, wasn't it? You know, and you've got to remember these folks are all amateur athletes. They self-funded themselves coming over from the USA. I think we had about 36 of them come from the USA, a men's team and a women's team. We had the ultimate winners of the men's, the Africa United Lions. They just came all the way from Sydney, 24, 25 hours flying, paid for themselves. You know, and people say there's no space for nines and no one's interested. Well, ask those guys, you know, that came on their own dime. But you mentioned the women from the USA, the Roots rugby team. And there's quite a bit of debate actually going on at the moment. We had our women's winners from 2018, the Castleford Tigers women, who you know are very, very technically good and really strong. They blew everybody away in the first year. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it last year, and then the Roots team came over. So we're trying to see if we can get Cas Tigers women and Roots over again next year. That would be some game of rugby league.
That would be epic, wouldn't it? That.
Yeah,
and to see the different styles as well that came out, that would be amazing. That would be
so physical. It'd probably be the top billing game ahead of any men's game, to be quite honest. That's
and what a brilliant way of attracting more supporters from somewhere else as well. Absolutely phenomenal that would be. The women, I think I remember the women saying when I talked to them that it was a project that they were there to actually they were trying to bring together like different people from I think, did they say the projects? I don't want to get it wrong, but I think they were saying that there's something like that.
So my understanding is Roots itself stands for Rugby Offering Opportunities to Succeed. And they're actually they pull players from all across the US. There was some players that come over from Canada that made up their team. Again, all amateur. A lot of them play rugby union. A lot of them play on the Sevens circuit in the US, which is very popular now. And one or two of them are ex-college footballers, including some of the women. So that's why you see them all very used to the quick feet and spin. Love the contact. There was one or two technical skills. I think early on they're a little bit, you know, furry with, but they just love getting that ball and running at people. You know, and we talk.
I think it was the crossfield long pass from one edge to the other.
Did that give it away? Yeah. You know, it's like the high basketball style jumps as well, isn't it? But they're just sheer athletes. And bearing in mind, everyone was playing in like 30-degree heat that day, and they were still pretty strong at the end, weren't they, as well?
So, they were. And watching them be able to break tackles was just sublime. But you know, the women were picking up the offload, the handoff, you know, backup play. It was there evidentiary as it went on, and it was just brilliant. I can't wait for next year. I was so disappointed about this year. It's gutting. But I mean, how have you watched this grow? I mean, you know, this should have been the third. How did you notice from the first year to the second year?
Well, year one was close to a mental breakdown, pretty much trying to make it happen. And in the process, you know, life has strange twists and turns, as we know. Myself and my wife actually moved from the UK to the US midway through me organising it. So I was trying to organise it from the west coast of America with a 9-hour time difference. And then this last year just gone, we decided to live stream it all. So thanks to the guys who operate Belgrade, Red Star Belgrade, and their associated company, Sportsflick, they took on the live stream of it. So we were essentially live streaming globally in 30-degree heat with 3 cameras and all doing it on a shoestring budget. So I think Colin Clerweg actually flew over with no sleep and did a full day of commentary, and then literally flew back the next day. It was like a crazy whole experience. I think in 2 days I
Yeah,
had
he was
like
just
4 hours sleep.
Yeah, I think Colin was saying that he literally, it was just like a stop off on his journey. He just popped in, didn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah. The guy's immense though. He's got a huge amount of energy. So, and this is what it's all about. It's a passion project, really, isn't it? And slowly we're bringing in other pillars to support it. I've got to explain to my wife in the next few days where we're going to store several gazebos, tackle bags, and branded post pads and 60 rugby balls that never got used this year. So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
I'm sure they'll be very inconspicuous.
Sure, yeah. There'll be every room, oh, look at that, let's put it away. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. And what's been pretty encouraging, I think, is seeing the teams and the new fans get behind it as well. And, we're getting a lot of people come back. We had a lot of new teams this year who inquired. We had a lot of regulars come back. And I'm thankful to say that for 2021, where the Rugby League World Cup team are going to be getting a little bit more involved as well. All 28 teams who had booked in this year have agreed to carry over to next year. And we've already got a few more inquiries as well. So, and this is going, not just across the UK, but again, a lot more from America, Europe, and Africa now as well. Actually, the African nations as well want to come over. And of course, Australia, if the timings work out of the seasons. We're just waiting to see what happens now with the realignment of the league coming back together as well.
Yeah, it is very difficult, and it's quite difficult for fans as well to imagine what it's going to look like. I think, lots of kind of grassroots has been put on hold, and you almost there's two kind of edges to it. They're losing a little bit of momentum, but at the same time, they're eager to see something happen. And I think that's difficult to balance. But the Euro Championships for Rugby League is happening next year, isn't it? Or is it the year after?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Have you had many inquiries from those teams? I mean, specifically, I'm asking about the Mad Squirrels because that's the best rugby league team ever in the name of it. I was just like, wow, brilliant.
That is pretty good. They are out and out, have to be a festival team, don't they? With a name. Yeah. Yeah. I think we almost had a full set of cards from the armed forces this year as well, which I was looking forward to. I think we had like Royal Engineers, Royal Logistics, Army, Navy, RAF. We had quite a big showing, so hopefully that comes through again next year. There'll be a lot more women's teams involved next year. We're getting a lot of inquiries from rugby union teams locally who enjoyed it. I don't know if you remember, but the local team, East London Vixens, who actually featured a Romanian national sevens player in their team, the tall Amazonian woman with amazing speed.
The ringer.
Who had only arrived in the country a month earlier, never played rugby league before, and then scored 7 tries on the day, It's the classic story of the what we call the man of the match, where I remember when we used to play, in the years before mobile phones, and you made arrangements to meet on the morning of the game to get the coach, and you always were losing 1 or 2 guys who had been out too late the night before. So you ended up press ganging the biggest guy that walked past that looked as though he must play rugby and had never played before. Always carried a spare pair of size 9 boots, because that person always wore size 9. Shoved a can of Lucozade in their hand. You'd educate them in the minibus on the way to the game. They'd play a blinder, probably get man of the match, and then you'd never see them again. It's fantastic.
And of course, now we have the advancement, don't we, that you can actually show them some footage and go, this is what you need to do. You see this guy here, run it in like that.
Just get the ball, go forward.
Which is good, is useful.
Go forward. But no, what's been interesting, to be fair, Emma, is the changes that kind of, both rugby league and rugby union are looking at right now to if you like, compensate or adapt for the pandemic, and the doing away with scrums. Rugby union are seriously considering, and I believe that's going to be one of the measures with Super League as it comes back initially.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
You've got to think, does this lend itself more to an abbreviated, more fast-flowing game? And you've already got one, haven't we, in nines? But for some reason, it's a bit of an oddity why rugby union has had such a successful, and I would say very huge marketing success with sevens for rugby union. Yet rugby league has never really grappled with it and never really found a solution and a place for it, which seems very odd when you compare the parity with rugby union.
You've been involved in the game for a long time. What do you think the reason for that would be?
That's an interesting question to throw at me.
Sorry.
Well, you've seen in Southern Hemisphere that obviously the London9s was probably the most successful whilst it ran. I think the challenge there, me personally, I think at the moment for rugby league, there and Steve Mascord's a big advocate of nines as well, as you know, and he's written some great articles on it.
He says hi as well, by the way. Hi, Steve.
He's watching me. I think he follows me like, where is my iPhone? I think he follows me around everywhere. But Steve did a great article a while back, and which was basically why, in a sense, the London9s was aimed at the wrong audience. And his suggestion was that it's like giving a free beer token to a millionaire. You're trying to encourage wealthy clubs in the NRL and players who are on, far better salaries than amateur players to come and play a nines tournament pre-season where you might get injured and it might impact your actual club level play. I don't understand the context of it other than trying to make a little money maker out of the event. So I think that's the key. I don't think rugby league has yet discovered the context of how nines fits
into the
as
model.
a game.
Yeah.
And to me, if you look at it on balance as a neutral, if you like, numbers are dwindling in playing. You're struggling to get players for clubs. You're struggling to get fans. There's financial reasons, but ultimately, you need to attract people to the game and break it outside of its traditional heartlands, for want of a better phrase. If you don't, the game retracts. It ultimately dies. It becomes something we talk about and look at sepia-coloured photos. Now, we've seen the upset and the reset of the pandemic. Nines presents a very exciting, compelling proposition, both to a new fan in potentially new countries who are not interested, to be quite honest, with the social history of the game. They just like the product. If presented in the right way, that's exciting, and sold in the right way to a potential broadcaster, then it's a huge, proposition. And I think that's why you could look at a model like the Magic Weekend as a nines format. You look at sevens tournaments; they work perfectly well. You could attract developing nations and have a nines format for them. To me, that seems the logical way to do it.
It makes it extremely accessible, though, doesn't it, to amateur clubs, to rugby union who want to play a fast-paced game, and also, like you said, emerging nations who don't maybe need to get the same numbers to be able to take part, and that's quite important. But I think, UK rugby league has always struggled to get out of that corridor successfully. London is doing extremely well, but something like, when I watched the nines, I was blown away. It's just such an involved excitement, and I felt sorry for the referees, if I'm honest. They have far more running around to do. But I think, like you said, you want to create a spectacle that people want to watch, and if it's a festival, you can come, they can bring the whole family. There's other bits and pieces for the kids to maybe be distracted for a little bit of time, and you can still come back to it and not really lost any excitement. So I think it's a fantastic model, and I think it would suit very much that kind of progression, because rugby clubs are struggling. And I did an interview with a guy called Mick Greensmith. He's chairman at Criggleston All Blacks, a local West Yorkshire side. They're struggling to get kids involved, and their open age is losing numbers rapidly, and that's something he's been trying to encourage back and make it more of a family vibe. And how can they encourage locals back to the club? There is a definite distancing, and I think something needs to be different, because what we've got now is obviously not working. So there needs to be a different slant, I think.
Yeah, I think as well. It's good to point out that 9s is not there to replace 13s. That's not the plan.
Of course. Yeah.
And your 13s will always be your premium product. But in order to get to that premium product and get, say, for instance, a new player involved, there's got to be a process, isn't there? A pathway of progression in their enjoyment and involvement. And equally, in engaging a fan, if you take a new fan along to, I was in the States, I went to watch a baseball game. I think I lasted about 60 minutes, How do you, if you don't understand it, and how do you engage? Equally, if you're watching a new sport and it's an 80-minute game, you don't understand it, you're going to switch off. And I think that's for younger kids now. The attention span is just not there. The interest level is not there. Can I handle a 15-minute game of loads of action where I can get the ball, I can tackle, I can score all in 15 minutes? Yeah, I love it. Straight up. Bring it on. Well, and I can also play against like 5 different teams in the same day. Oh, even better.
I think one of the things that we noticed was there were players that we could highlight that we were like, right, he'd work really good there, or she'd be brilliant in that team, and you were kind of watching it as a recruiter. I'm like, I could become an agent.
Yeah, so we had, I think it was the guys from Lithuania who were playing, and one or two of them ended up going across to play for a couple of the, for like the NCL clubs, who were there on the day as well. But you look at some of the guys coming over from Belgrade, fantastic athletes as well, and knowledgeable over the game. We had teams from Lithuania, from Wales, from Belgrade, from Australia, USA, and there were some bizarre matchups, but humdingers of games, weren't they? And the women as well. Armed forces against local rugby union club playing a team from USA, playing the Royal Navy. It was just quite fascinating.
And it's very difficult to reproduce that on any other platform, isn't it?
Well, it takes a lot of coordination and organisation, and invariably, all these teams, wherever you're from, you're playing in a fixed league yourself. So it's very difficult to then organise something outside of that, unless it's a one-off day where you can all come together. And that's why ultimately, when I first started this, I mean, basically, I don't know the answers. I kind of trial and error, and just take risks, and probably more fail than work, but then we learn and then we don't do them again. That's the intention anyway. But the first year we changed the spec for the second year, and we changed it again for this year, and we've already got plans in place to change things again and make it a lot more interactive on the live stream position, with a lot more graphics and fan engagement, gamification, if you like, to get a much bigger reach. So we're trying to find interesting, innovative, that's the word, innovative. Something like Joe Marler then. Ways of trying to get people interested. Because what I don't like to see is when people kind of film their game and you just see dots on the horizon, and you hear somebody dog barking and you can't really see anything. So it's got to be a little bit more, you've got to trial things out, haven't you? So we'll see. But no, I think at the end of the day, it's entertainment. And if it loses the fact that it's not entertaining, then you're not going to get people interested. It's pretty much as simple as that.
So last year was great, very, very hot. I have to admit, I struggled with some of the names of some of the players. I had to look to Colin a couple of times. I was like, I don't know how to say that, but we can watch that. We can relive those moments, can't we, this weekend? Because you're doing something quite special, aren't you?
Well, hopefully, yes. Yes, it is going to happen. So we should have had the event this coming Sunday over in East London. Obviously, we're not going to be able to go ahead with the actual event, so we try and do the next best thing. And thanks to CKM Red and Sportsflick, who provided all the live stream content last year, they've allowed us to use that on our Facebook page at the London9s. So we're actually from 10 a.m. in the morning, GMT. We're going to run the whole several hours of live stream throughout the course of Sunday. and that will include all the commentary. You may recognise your voice on there a number of times, Emma. There's a little bit of all the interviews that Damien did, Colin, some close-ups of the tries. I think we've got about 100 tries that are filmed over 19 games. And it'd be pretty awesome. And what I've done just the other day is go through and pull out all the game times. So by tomorrow, hopefully, we can send out notification to the teams to let them know what time on Sunday their games are shown. So they can get folks to jump on and have a look. But what we're hoping is that people will share that out and get the word out on what Nines is all about. And hopefully we can welcome more new teams and new countries to get involved for 21.
Definitely, yeah. It'll be nice, I think, for teams who maybe didn't see last year but have entered, for them to watch to see sort of magnitude of what they're letting themselves in for as well.
I think I get a few messages every now and again from the Welsh boys saying, "Oh, I wish we'd never drank so much the night before." And there's my Irish accent there. But I think because it's obviously the Challenge Cup final the day before, a lot of teams have gone out pretty big, and then they haven't appreciated, I think, first of all, how hot it was going to be the next day and how fast the games were. So, I think a lot of teams are now starting to think, hang on a minute, this isn't just a kick around in the park. This is pretty, pretty competitive stuff.
Exactly.
And nobody likes to lose. So there was a lot of teams thinking next year we're coming back and we're getting tooled up.
There was a player, wasn't there, he played for 2 teams for the entire tournament, didn't he? Was he playing for Edinburgh? I'm sure it was like Edinburgh and one of the European countries as well, wasn't he? He was playing for 2 teams, and all you kept seeing was him swapping his jersey. I mean, that was a lot of energy.
I mean, we say teams have to register their names, which they do for insurance, and what we're trying to tighten up on for the commentary as well is that we know which player is in which number shirt. But we do sanction if they let us know that a player can move from one team to the other as well, obviously to make the numbers. And you found it a lot through the course of the day with the women's teams as well. I think it was the RAF picked up a number of injuries and recruited players from one of the other teams. And look, at the end of the day, we're there to make sure everybody enjoys themselves and the games are as best they can be. Pretty much a lot of those games were very close. There was only 1 try difference. And I think we were even debating at one point, any one of 3 teams could have made the second berth in the final, and it was down to the very last game. In fact, I think it actually went to try scoring difference, didn't it?
Yes.
The men's social. So they were all really quick, really close games, which was good to see as well.
And that made it very exciting for us, but also for the teams. There was that nail-biting kind of finish to it, which is what you want, isn't it? From anything, any tournament, any sport. That's the kind of level of excitement. But my cat's joining. Just bear with me. Do you want to come and join in there? Look, come on. But yeah, I mean,
put it on your lap and. Was it James Bond character?
James Bond, yeah, she's good like that. She would probably just fall asleep if I'm honest. She's not very aggressive, but yeah, it would be. I know a couple of teams who, having seen my reaction and me talk about it, they've now entered, and one of them is Team Colostomy UK. And that's quite an unusual setup. But I actually played in one of their full matches against the political animals. And like you said, they're a social side, but they're also very competitive. And it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to that, because they don't normally play nines, but they don't play together very much either, because of the way that team's set up. So I'm quite keen to watch to see how they get on, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm pleased they entered. That's Giovanni Sink, isn't it? And his
yes, it is. Yeah.
It's good that they enter. We get 1 or 2 charity teams entering actually, which is good to see. But yeah, I mean, I was just going to mention, it popped into my head there about the closeness of the games. The London Scholars Lithuania final, Lietuvia Rugby League in their first official tournament, and I think that went down to the last a few seconds of the game, in fact, didn't it?
You're giving away the endings.
I won't say anymore. I didn't say who won, though, did I? Did I say who won that?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
You got me just in time. Hold on. We'll have to edit that out.
No, we don't want to spoil it. You know,
No, I started looking at the footage the other day because I had to go through and put the time in, so I was reliving the whole thing again. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. But you know, look, I mean, I was just come back from the USA. I spent 2 years in the USA. We moved over. My wife got a job over there, and I moved over and was helping out predominantly with rugby union and professional rugby union in the States. But it was a real eye opener because you realise the possibilities of what rugby league can achieve as well on the back of that. If you work smart, you don't need to reinvent the wheel if someone else is already investing and putting the publicity out there. You just present the product and let the athlete choose.
What was it like watching the footage from a different viewpoint? Because obviously on the day you were kind of intricate in the workings and everything running smoothly. So to take a step out of that and like watch it as a spectator, what was that like? What to do?
It was actually quite enjoyable. On the day, I don't think I watched a single game.
No.
I think I caught
that's what I mean.
Of each game throughout the day, and the rest was dealing with things that people didn't know was happening, should we say? And we had some major issues of things that happened and didn't happen. But look, that's all part and parcel of just making the show happen and making the event go ahead. And fortunately, we had a fantastic team. You know, it was almost a cast of thousands spread across the world that were helping to make that event happen. Many of whom who weren't getting paid at all, but were doing it again because they wanted to see it take place. And it reminds me, I'll probably quote the wrong thing now, but I think it's a famous Shackleton quote. I'm sure it was Shackleton who put an advert in the newspaper when he was trying to get a team together. I think it was around about 1918 to go to the pole, and he basically advertised saying that, you know, you may suffer hardship, freezing cold, no sleep, minimal sleep, hardly any food, and you might not even come back. You might die. Apply below. And he was inundated with applications, and it was kind of that kind of philosophy. I was pretty upfront saying, look, I haven't got any money. We're doing this on a shoestring. We're learning as we go. We're trying to be smart and use technology to save time. Beg, borrow. No stealing, but smiling politely and constantly asking and not accepting no. And on the back of that, you attract the people who have a similar mindset that just want to get it done. We try not to get mired in politics and this is my ball, not your ball, and all the rest of it. It's just about making the event happen, showing people what it's all about. And look, if you want to come along, these are the rules. If you want to play by the rules, you're welcome. Simple as that.
Where can we see it going then? You briefly mentioned next year people are still coming. That's brilliant. So what can we see happening?
Well, normally coming from the northwest of England, I always say weather permitting. So now that we've got this pandemic, I'll say pandemic permitting. You know, and that's interesting. That's led to a few different avenues of thought, because if we do have a situation that's still, you know, residual issues of what we're dealing with now that we have to consider for next July, we don't know. Nines is probably lends itself better than playing a game of 13s, and you know, goodness knows how rugby union's going to figure it out with ruck smalls and origin. But one thing we're looking at is maybe individual players wearing gloves, individual issued gloves, as a way of reducing contact and reducing skin on skin. There's not that many tackles in a game of nines anyway. So to be quite honest, my answer would be pass the ball, don't get tackled. To mitigate risk. But look, at the end of the day, it can grow. We've got a good foundation now. All our partners are coming back again next year. And it's now, I think it's a question of still concentrating on just bedding down the London one, growing a bigger audience, linking up with some other partners. I'm always in touch with the RFL and the Rugby League World Cup team, and you know, we're trying to look at some mutual mutually beneficial ways of helping promote the World Cup next year with John and his team. The World Cups will definitely be down at the London9s next July. That's already been approved, and we're looking most probably at a way of helping them promote ticket sales in that July window. We presume that the Challenge Cup final will be taking place at Wembley again in July. It's
fingers crossed, eh?
Well, they've got a deal, I believe, with Wembley Stadium for, I think, another 6 years now on that July weekend. So the Saturday will be the Wembley Cup final. The Sunday will be the Nines. And yeah, ideally, let's get some more countries involved. I think that's the exciting route, isn't it? We've got another 3 or 4 fields that we can move into if we need them. So we've got spare capacity on that site. And I think we'll have a much bigger, and we've learned a few things from the live stream that we can expand on for next year, which is ultimately connecting the dots with people who can't make it on the day, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, and I'm actually trying to play around with a few technologies at the moment
as well. Sorry, I was going to say what was really nice for me. I've seen on your LinkedIn, there's still a stream of people who are getting involved. It's not gone dead. There's nothing kind of stopped. The work's still being put in, and there's still sponsors and people, partners coming in, and I think that's brilliant. It shows how much passion there is for it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I was pretty conscious at the beginning to build relationships. And relationships have to be reciprocated. So in these tough times since March, Steeden, our bull suppliers, you don't get a lot of business if you're a sports merchandising, rugby ball supplier when there's no sport being played. So we've had a lot of contact with them and looking at ways of how we can help them and still work together. Equally, our tri sponsors and our branding sponsors have stuck with us and said, keep hold of the money that we've given you for now, and we'll roll that over. So, it's about being sensible and about trying to look at longer term partnerships, I think, which possibly sometimes in sport can be knee jerk. People keep jumping from one bed to another. So I think you have to just sit it out, be sensible, and constantly keep looking to improve and learn yourself. That's kind of what I do. You get sometimes over analytical. Have to go for a walk, but yeah, and of course we're trying to help the teams out as well. At the end of the day, we recognise that for a lot of rugby league teams, it's run and a lot of administrative time is by volunteers. Even if players are getting paid, it's pretty much a token payment, and we recognise that. So where we can, the teams who have travel costs or accommodation costs, we're trying to make contacts. And this year we had arranged a deal with a hostel in London where we had pre-block booked accommodation in central London for £20 a night for teams, which is a huge
that's cheap, isn't it?
saving as well. So, and that's, I'm sure, something we can put in place for next year as well. So we're listening to the feedback of the players and the teams and trying to see what we can do to help them.
I think talking about players being paid. I think it was like two pints, and if you scored a try, you got an extra one.
That's it. IMPs afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so if people want to get in touch with you, definitely. If people want to get in touch with you to either help out on the day, help out in the run up, and get involved with sponsorship, how can they contact you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably the easiest way is to go to our website at London9s.uk, London9s.uk, and there's a contact form on there. Just pop a little bit of detail down so I know what you're talking about, and I'll get in touch. But yeah, if you've got any thoughts, if you want to come and volunteer, you want to be part of the day, you might want to get some event experience. We had a couple of guys with us last year that were doing a college course and needed some practical experience. Anything, or if you're a team or an individual player and you want to play.
Referees,
very good, yeah. We do actually run our own referees academy as well. So through the London Referees Society, we can also orchestrate and train you if you're interested in becoming a rugby league referee. It's an official RFL course, takes 1 day. And if you wish to do it, I'll even subsidise it for you. And you're welcome to come and be part of the team refereeing at the London9s. And we'll even give you a strip as well, a lovely pink shirt.
It's a very nicely designed shirt, though.
The referees told me they wanted a strip that was theirs, and they wanted to be noticeable and not clash with any teams. They're really granted.
The referees, though, I mean, just touching on them briefly, the referees did a great job, and equally they had, trying to keep them hydrated and well for the whole tournament. It was brilliant to chat to them about their experience of it, but they loved it, didn't they? They had such a great time, and I think the whole spirit of it was just everybody just took it on board.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, those guys and women as well, they work extremely hard. So we had a lot of meetings beforehand where we looked at the logistics. I spoke to them at length about the rules, and they had a lot of input in designing the rules. The big issue we had way back when, 2 or 3 years ago, was we couldn't get referees. And my initial conversations with governing bodies was, we have no referees. And when I asked, well, when are the courses for referees? We're not running any because we haven't got any referees. So we kind of went around in a strange loop. So in the end, we just said, well, how about we just run our own courses and we'll qualify people, and then they'll come and referee for us. And if they want, they can then continue and referee junior league and progress up. So we essentially created a referees academy a couple of years ago, which the Scholars helped us with, providing training facilities and pitches and everything. And I think we've put like 25 people through that course now, which the London9s funded as well. And as you know, be it union league, whatever level, the majority of games are cancelled, not because you can't get 26 players or 30 players. It's because you can't get one person, a referee. Now, to me, that just seems ludicrous. We talk about grassroots sport suffering. The focus should not be on player retention. It should be on referee retention and what you're doing to support that referee. We had Jamie Jones come over, fantastically experienced referee. He loved it. Kieran and Ken, who a lot of you listeners will probably know from the London area, real passionate guys, but, same as folks who are involved in grassroots sport, a lot of this they're putting in their own time and money. And the only recompense they get is a bit of expenses, that's all. So we did a deal. Part of the arrangement we had with Steeden was they provided free of charge an entire referee strip that we designed for them. We designed a leisure wear range for them as well. They've got kit bags, tracksuits, so they've got post-game apparel, which is all their own. So they'll be fully kitted out. So they'll be walking out as though they're going out onto centre court at the London9s next year. And this is what it's all about. And I'm a big believer if you engage people in the process. And I basically said to them, I said, look, how do you want to run the format of the day? So we had the live stream consideration, and we had the logistical challenge of refereeing what in the end was, I think, over 50 games in 1 day that had to run like clockwork in order to fit with the live stream schedule. And added into that, you've got the medical side as well. So we had the medical guys telling us, things you've got to put in place as well. So, but they just ran it amazingly. And we coordinated all the results so we could feed that back and make instant decisions on, nail biters where you've got 3 teams all vying for the same place is far from clear cut if you're the event organizer and you just want a clear person to go through so you can move on quickly. No, I think the referees are the real rock stars of an event like that. Without them, it just simply doesn't happen. So the first people on the team sheet are your referees.
Yeah. And I think it's difficult to be a referee now. I mean, obviously, the festival was completely different, the 9s festival, because they didn't have any negativity to them. And sometimes I think, when speak to younger referees who are starting out, that is something that puts them off. So it's nice to come and ref in somewhere you're not going to get any sort of anything like that. It's something that worries me for referees, to be fair, and I think it probably happens in other sports, but you know where you are with your own, don't you? And you hear them talking about it between each other.
Yeah, I think the beauty of having, I mean, we had like a team of about 8 to 10 in the end, with the scorers and the runners and the event, the referees controller. I think it was like a team of about 10. And so you've got a real support network really there. And we had like a welfare area, and they'd exchange stories. And, you know, there's a certain degree of education required as well, because we were using slightly novel rules for that format. So, for instance, we played 15-minute games with no half time. That had the element of rolling substitutions. And at first time we tried that, we weren't sure how it would work. But I've seen a lot of 9s and played a lot of 9s, I've watched and played 7s. And for me, I just didn't understand why you need the half time in a game so short, because over the whole event of a festival day, if you include a 2-minute break, which I don't really think players need anyway, you lose about an hour and a half of the day, which across 3 fields is a lot of games you lose.
Yeah.
So if you just introduce the element of rolling subs, it worked pretty fine. And, you know, 1 or 2 folks initially were saying, well, you know, you can't do that because when teams are defending, they'll bring on 6 new players and take 6 players off. And I said, well, let's wait and see, because I've played a lot of rugby, and it's a bit like Monty Python. Even if I had lost a leg and lost an arm, I wasn't coming off that pitch. You know, sure enough, even when people are concussed, it's actually difficult to get them off because they just don't want to the pitch. So, you know, it's almost like a mobile phone, you know, terms and conditions, you know, you have like a fair trade agreement in a way with them, don't you? But no, it didn't come to pass, and everyone, referees and the players, seemed to be okay with it. So it allowed us to get more games into the game day.
I think if you have unless you have like a favourite end which you feel is lucky and you want to score at that particular end, you know, there's no need to switch and have that half. It also loses a little bit of momentum, doesn't it? Because the game is short, or you change around. I think you lose that intensity, don't you?
Yeah, you kind of just getting things feisty and getting it going, and then you're diffusing it all for 2 minutes, aren't you? And then you've got to build it up again. Equally, there's probably a fair case to say that if players are you know, their muscles are warm as well, playing at such short bursts of speed, do you really want them cooling down for 2 minutes and then starting up again? I'm sure that might end up, you know, a few strains and pulls and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But you know, what was interesting as well is I don't know if some teams didn't fully know the rule was there and maybe hadn't fully appreciated it. But in some of those close games, there was a few cases where teams didn't necessarily, or they didn't have to take the drop kick for the 2 points after scoring a try. They could just relinquish that and play straight away, which is actually in the rules as well. The 2-point drop kick conversion is optional. So if you bear in mind you've got a stop clock of 30 seconds, and it probably takes in total about a minute to set up, play and restart after a try, you're losing a minute of a 15-minute game by opting to take the 2.
I don't remember seeing many actually that did opt. You know, some teams did, because it was like you say, it was interesting. But maybe now they've watched this, they're just all going to just go, well, we'll just restart and score again.
There'll be a few strategizing now, won't they? And thinking about it, you know. But I think as well, it's almost like having your quarterback in a team, isn't it? I think you need to have a dedicated person who can keep drop kicks. And one of the only teams I really saw giving it to one person was, again, the Roots women, in fact.
Yeah.
And she was kicking quite a few. And if you think you score 3 tries and you get 3 successful conversions, another 6 points, that's the difference between winning and losing in some games.
Yeah, she was good. She was good. Very accurate. But yeah, they'll all be taking notes now. They've got the pen and paper out, and they're gonna we're gonna see that next year.
Plenty of time ahead of next year. We've left the rules on the website, so you can actually go on there and download them and have a little scroll through. but they're all designed to promote running rugby, and potentially, next year we'll see how things happen with the whole contract situation. But we could even take out scrums altogether and just have just purely tackle starts.
I think that's being muted, isn't it? Anyway, like not a non-contested scrum, does it need to be there? Does it help facilitate moving forward in the pandemic if we can take it out?
Yeah. I think it gets
so. Do you have any?
Also have, hold on. If you also
I
have,
was going to say.
Yeah, get the question. Go on.
Go on. Go on. You finish what you were saying.
I'm scared now. Yeah, so I think that's fine to lose the scrums in league, but if you're also talking about limiting the number of substitutions as well, I think that's where you get to a fine line with kind of player welfare and risk injuries. Because that's some of the considerations right now, I think, especially in the NRL as well, isn't it, to limit the number of rotations. So you have a more authentic game in some way, but I don't think you can do that at the same time as losing, what form of scrum is left anyway, even though it's not a real scrum. It's kind of just a way of recycling the play, isn't it?
Yeah, but it does give that kind of break and a little bit of a rest, which does make the difference. It's something that I'm quite conscious of from an injury point of view. Certainly when they were talking about bringing Super League back, but having more games in a condensed space, you don't want to end up with that Easter kind of regimen and then have that throughout the whole of a potential season and try to keep your players fit. It isn't going to work. So, but I think that's a whole of a show, to be fair.
I was always a big fan of the rest when I used to play. I was a big fan of a scrum.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I play in the forwards. I get to halfway and then watch other people score a try.
Exactly.
Well, it's been absolutely brilliant chatting to you. I've put on the bottom Facebook 10 o'clock Sunday. You can watch the London9s from last year and watch a lot of action, a lot of tries, a lot of skill and talent. And I'm looking forward to sitting there with I might even have a beer or something. Recreate the ambience.
At 10 in the morning.
Yeah, well, not at 10 in the morning.
Very European.
Yeah, brilliant. And I will share it over as well. And I think you've got I think somebody's coordinating that, aren't they? So it'll be on Facebook. People can pick it up on various different pages.
That's right. Yeah. So Sean, who runs Fill Your Boots Rugby, which is a grassroots rugby portal, he's been helping us sort of fine tune some of the footage and just connect up a few Facebook accounts so we can share that out. But essentially, it starts 10 a.m. London time, and then we've put some timings out so folks in the US and Australia can coordinate with watching. And I'll pop some details out shortly to the teams and put some information out there so they can dive in and watch their games. And I think the main ones, you don't want to miss those three finals. And of course, the Manor cheerleaders doing backflips was pretty impressive. Impressive. So that's worth watching as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for giving up your time as well to chat. And everyone's very busy and it's all very hectic at the minute. So it's much appreciated for sharing your story.
No, good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Speak soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.